Hi everyone, James Egersdorff here, previewing game week 25 of the Fantasy Premier League. Really exciting part of the season now as we head towards that final furlong, so to speak. Some real interesting news with Sanchez, of course, joining Man United and Mkhitaryan going the other way. I think both those could be potentially some really good fantasy options in the coming weeks. I'm going to talk a bit more about that shortly. I'm also going to talk about Arnautovic, and perhaps you might be looking for a replacement for him or Lanzini. Some really bad news for West Ham there. Likewise, maybe what you might like to do with Makazaku. I always say that name wrong. Masuaku. If you have him in your team, he's banned for like 6 weeks. So I'm going to cover that as well, and I think that the strategy you need to take on that this time of year, and also the captaincy choices. So starting where the action is, the re-emergence of our star men. So we've got Harry Kane, who's banging form. Tottenham aren't really playing too great at the minute. They had quite a tricky FA Cup tie over the weekend down at Newport and got a replay. And of course we've had Sanchez, who's back, and he looked good, albeit against Yeovil on Friday night in the Cup. And then we've got our old fantasy football hero, Sergio Aguero, back in form, back amongst the goals, back in the team. So you've got 3 options there. With Salah, I believe, on top of that. Salah's pretty essential. I'd say you've got to have him right now. If you don't have him, then I think you're missing a trick. How do we get these star men into our team? Well, the answer is it's really difficult. You can't really get them all into your team without compromising other areas. So what you don't want to do is have a good 11 players and then a subs bench that is hopeless, that is full of people that never play, because then you just one illness or injury or suspension away from having a team that only contains 10 men, and that's no good. So analysing these three guys, I think it comes down to, and this is what you have to think about, there's no right or wrong answer. It comes down to who you would captain for that week. So people who follow me and have watched me for long enough know about my thoughts behind what I call Kane exit. So the idea of not having Kane in your team. I still think that strategy is a really good one if you've got some viable alternatives and you're not going to captain Kane. So Kane has Man United, Liverpool and Arsenal. So whilst on the one hand, Kane could score against anybody, it's Harry Kane, right? At the same time, Tottenham might lose all those games, they might lose them all to 0. Even if Kane does score, if they're getting beat, he might not get bonus, so the best you're kind of hoping for is 6 points. And if he's going to be your captain, would you be able to get those points elsewhere? Is there a better captain option that week? So there is argument, I still think, for getting shot of Kane for the next few weeks. You get the benefit of reinvesting the extra money that you have because he's the most expensive player in the game. Small caveat to it, and I found this when I did the Kane, remove Kane over Christmas. You then have to get him back, and to get the money back, it kind of takes a few moves to get it again. There's another challenge, which is lots of people will have value tied up in Kane. So simple maths, if you bought him for 12, he's now worth 13, you'd sell him for 12.5. Overnight you lose 0.5 that you'd have to find somewhere else, and that money, the closer to the end of the season we get, is more valuable because you've got less weeks. FPL, as we know, works like the stock market, so the longer you've got left in the season, the more time you have for that player's value to go up. Less weeks, it's going to be harder to get that value back. So it really hinges on who you're going to captain. So, we've talked about Kane, you're probably not going to captain him. Aguero, what's he got? West Brom home, Burnley away, Leicester home, so next 3 pretty good. Sanchez, you're probably not going to captain him down at Spurs. Huddersfield is a screamer, that looks really good. First home game at Old Trafford, and the Newcastle away, pretty good. And then I think after that he's got Chelsea, so his fixtures are kind of up and down. You might say he's only got 1 throughout that time. Funnily, Salah, for the next 5 weeks, I think he's got games where we'd quite easily captain him perhaps every week. He's got Tottenham at home, but that could be quite high scoring next week, I think that is. But aside from that, he's got some pretty straightforward fixtures, so he's always a fallback option. So evidence again, or reasoning again, why you perhaps don't need all these big hitters. You maybe just need to choose the ones 2 out of the 3, maybe if you can fit them in. The other thing to factor in, there's a couple of things I've thought about. The FA Cup draw tonight. Now, if you look at the fixtures, those three aforementioned guys, and Salah included, I think Liverpool are still in, they've all got Champions League games coming up in the next couple of weeks, early Feb. FA Cup draw, you've got the first leg midweek, and then on the Saturday is the FA Cup. So if any of these guys get a nice home tie against a League One club or a League Two club, that's going to help with the Premier League, because there's a game that they can probably have a rest that game week. Likely, if one of them draws, a really tricky match, it's going to be tough for them to rotate. So it means that they've got an extra game plus the Champions League, and that adds to that burden. Just a side note on City, the Aguero bit, something I'm really interested in. Gabriel Jesus, when's he coming back? There was something in the local press here in Manchester over the weekend. A couple of interesting things actually that I'll share with you. Jesus is back and he's training, but he's on sort of running machines and gym weights and things, so he's not even out on the grass yet. So maybe that gives you a couple of weeks for him. The other bit I thought was interesting, side note, the local press here in Manchester, in the Manchester Evening News, they think that Lingard will keep his place, so I thought that was quite interesting, and they think Sanchez will benefit, obviously, Lingard and add creativity to that team. So if you do have Lingard and you're a bit worried, maybe keep on to him and just see how that goes. Probably the same applies for all the United guys. We don't really know where he's going to fit in. So I hope that covers that a bit. It's a bit of a minefield, but I think 2 from the 3. Arnautovic, what to do with him? He's out for a month. You've got to get rid. You can't really carry players. Alternatives, Shaqiri. I do like him. I wouldn't say world class, but he's a class player at international level. He gets injuries. He's a bit inconsistent. I wonder about. There's a lot of talk about him. I had him at the start of the season. He's dipped to 5.4. Choupo-Moting. Will he get at least a life under Lambert? That's a possibility. Still quite like Lucky Chamberlain. I think he's really good value. Still like Lingard that I mentioned. I wonder if our friend Richarlison will decide to turn up for this new manager. A bit of a risk, but we know he's got some credentials. And there's some possible bargains flying around. So Aaron Lennon, I know, has just gone to Burnley. I'm not preaching Aaron Lennon as an option, but he's an attacking player. I'd expect he will play. And I'd expect his value is probably quite low. The other one I like, by the way, at that price is Albrighton at Leicester. So there's quite a lot there. Have a fish around and see what you can think. But like I've said in previous videos, if you can hold for today and Tuesday, and maybe there'd be a player that gets transferred that is a bargain, or is looking for a first team place that could be a good option for you. Our old mate, if you've got him like me, Masuaku. Out for 6 games, what a wally. At the minute, I'd probably just hold him. I think there's bigger problems, or more transfers you can make that will make you more points. Stick him on your bench. You might lose a bit of value, annoyingly, but see if you can switch him out when you get a week where you've not got as many urgent things to solve. And then finally, captain options this week. Hard to see against Aguero. I don't have Aguero, but I was really interested to see that he didn't start that game against Cardiff in the Cup. So that suggests to me he's probably going to start the West Brom game, which is pretty enticing. Salah, like I've said, pretty consistent run of half-decent fixtures over the next 5 games. Liverpool have had a bit of a ropey result last time out against Swansea, which, if you remember, I felt there was something I didn't say Swansea will win, but I did feel that Liverpool might struggle, not to the extent that they did. But that was a bad result. Kane, of course, for consistency. If I had Sanchez, would have captained him now. I mean, hell, the guy's a world-class player, but Spurs away is a pretty tough game. But then he is a former Arsenal player, so maybe that could be an option. I think it's a bit risky. I think I'd play safe with one of those 3 other guys that I mentioned there. I hope that's really useful. As ever, thank you for all your support and for all the comments that you send and the conversation we have on Twitter. Keep them coming. Have a brilliant game week, and I'll be back at the weekend for game week 26. Cheers.